going to go below water, and we're going to have a look at life below water, the SDG 14. So the underlying principle here is to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, sea and marine resources for sustainable development. Very clear aspiration there. We'll have a look at a few key statistics and facts here. Our oceans, of course, are the planet's largest ecosystem, and as a result of climate change and pollution and all the other issues we have discussed, they are significantly endangered. Increased acidification is threatening marine life and limiting the ocean's capacity to moderate climate change. The ocean absorbs a quarter of the global CO2 emissions, so by destabilizing the ocean, you are further destabilizing and reducing a feedback loop which would help to actually mitigate against the CO2 issues. So it's a sort of a double negative there. Plastic and marine pollution is absolutely in a very extreme state at this stage. I'm sure some of you have heard of these large islands of plastic that are floating out in the Pacific and other oceans. Vast areas of oceans now are badly polluted with large amounts of plastic. We will have a look at this in later modules, but it's some very disturbing images available there on that. The ocean is warming, part of global warming. Eutrophication, algal bloom, where algae are taking over and causing a lot of ecosystem issues. Acidification, again, changing the chemistry of the water and changing, therefore, the organisms that can live in the water and changing the ecosystem, which ultimately has a negative effect. Overfishing, of course, another significant problem. Plastic pollution is choking the ocean. 17 plus million metric tons of plastic entered the ocean just in 2021. And this is projected to double or triple by 2040. 90% of the world's fishers are employed in small-scale fisheries, and these need accelerated support, mainly as a result of the pandemic. So for life below water, we have 10 targets, and we shall go through them now. So target 14.1, by 2025, preventing and significantly reducing marine pollution of all kinds, particularly from land-based activities, including marine debris and nutrient pollution. Marine pollution is a combination of chemicals and trash, most of which comes from land sources and is washed or blown into the sea. This pollution results in damage to the environment, to the health of all the organisms, and of course to the economic structures that the organisms and the ecosystems support. The indicator for this particular target is an index of coastal eutrophication and also looking at the plastic debris density. Target 14.2. By 2020, sustainably manage and protect marine and coastal ecosystems to avoid significant adverse impacts, including strengthening their resilience and taking action for their restoration to achieve healthy and productive oceans. So manage and protect marine coastal ecosystems. There are approximately 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic waste estimated to be in the oceans, and 269,000 tons float, and 4 billion microfibers per square kilometre dwell below the surface. These are terrifying statistics, but hopefully we will all, by doing the right thing, be able to address some of these and get some wins. The indicator for this particular target are looking at the number of countries using ecosystem-based approaches to managing marine areas. And just a little plug for ATU there, we have a very, very strong marine biology department which are doing a lot of work on pollution and marine biology and marine pollution mitigation. Target 14.3, minimize and address the impacts of ocean acidification, including through enhanced scientific cooperation at all levels. The ocean absorbs about 30% of the carbon dioxide that is released in the atmosphere. As levels of atmospheric CO2 increase from human activities such as burning fossil fuels, the amount of CO2 absorbed by the ocean also increases. So clearly, ocean absorption is a significant problem. The indicator for this particular target are the average marine acidity, or the pH, measured at agreed suite of representative sampling stations. So basically the way to monitor this is to monitor the pH of the ocean across the world. The more CO2 that's absorbed into the ocean, the more acidic the ocean becomes. which is obviously going to cause issues, as I mentioned before, in relation to changing the organisms that can live in to live effectively and sustainably in the conditions. Target 14.4. By 2020, effectively regulate harvesting and end overfishing, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and destructive fishing practices, and implement science-based management plans to restore fish stocks in the shortest time feasible. They want to do this to at least levels that can produce maximum sustainable yields as determined by their biological characteristics. This is basically trying to be sensible and sustainable about how we organize our fishing industry. Globally, overfishing is the greatest pressure on marine ecosystems. Ireland has consistently been one of the worst offenders in Europe when it comes to overfishing. Overfishing endangers seabirds, fish, and cetaceans, as well as billions of people who rely on seafood as a key source of protein. So, how are we going to look at this? How are we going to look at this in terms of the SDGs and indicators? The proportion of fish stocks within biologically sustainable levels. That's the kind of monitoring, that's what they're going to monitor. What is the proportion of fish stocks that are within the biologically sustainable levels? So those levels obviously have to be scientifically calculated. Again, as I say, we have a very strong marine biology department in ATU, and we will be talking to some of their scientists later on about pollution and, of course, also sustainable fishing. Target 14.5. By 2020, conserve at least 10% of coastal and marine areas, consistent with national and international law and based on the best available scientific information. Conserve at least 10% of coastal and marine areas. The reality is, the ocean is sustaining all of us, covering more than 70% of the world's surface. It's the largest ecosystem on Earth. It is essentially the planet's life support system, regulating the air we breathe, the climate we live in, the food we eat, and so much more. So, conserving and minding and looking after the ocean is absolutely essential. The way this target is going to be monitored is looking at the coverage of protected areas in relation to marine areas. Target 14.6. By 2020, prohibit certain forms of fisheries subsidies which contribute to overcapacity and overfishing. Eliminate subsidies that contribute to illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and refrain from introducing new subsidies, recognizing that appropriate and effective special and differential treatment for developing and least developed countries should be an integral part of the World Trade Organization fisheries subsidies negotiation. Again, this is basically about applying common sustainable sense to our strategies in relation to fishing, trying to get rid of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, subsidize and avoiding subsidizing fishing that is utterly unsustainable. It is one of the big things that we will discover, I think, as we go forward in the program. I think we will probably see quite a lot of blogs about this. Is that a lot of the problems we have are being supported by inappropriate funding and inappropriate subsidies. And sometimes you need to dig a little bit deeper. Some of the subsidies that we are, especially in relation to the food subsidies that we have, there are lots of issues in relation to how sustainable a lot of those are, and who are they sustaining? Very, very interesting when you start looking at some of the numbers. So, how will this be monitored? They look at the degree of implementation of international instruments aimed at combating illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Target 14.7. By 2030, increase the economic benefits to small island developing states and least developed countries from the sustainable use of marine resources, including through sustainable management of fisheries, agriculture, and tourism. Small island developing states are a distinct group of 38 UN member states and 20 non-UN member states of the United Nations regional commissions that face unique social, economic, and environmental vulnerabilities. This will be monitored by looking at sustainable fisheries as a proportion of GDP in the small island developing states. Target 14A. By 2030, increase the economic benefits to small island developing states, increase scientific knowledge, develop their research capacity, and transfer marine technology. taking into account the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission criteria and guidelines on the transfer of marine technology to improve ocean health and to enhance the contribution of marine biodiversity to the development of developing countries, particularly small island developing states and least developed countries. So basically, this is try to benefit the small island developing states in relation to marine technology, providing additional supports to develop their knowledge base and their research capacity. As with the previous goals, least developed countries and small island developing states must be supported in terms of economic benefits, research, and technology. How will we monitor this, or what indicators are there for this? Well, the proportion of total research budget allocated to research in the field of marine technology, presumably applied to those particular countries and states. Target 14B, provide access for small-scale artisanal fishers to marine resources and markets. Artisanal fisheries are small-scale fisheries for subsistence or local small markets, generally using traditional fishing techniques and small boats. They occur around the world, but particularly in developing nations, and they are vital to the livelihoods of many people and ultimately, obviously, to food security. The indicator for this particular target is the degree of application of legal, statutory, or institutional frameworks which recognise and protect access rights for small-scale fisheries. Target 14C. Enhance the conservation and sustainable use of oceans and their resources by implementing international laws as reflected in the UNCLOS, which provides the legal framework for the conservation and sustainable use of oceans and their resources, as recalled in paragraph 158 of the Future We Want. And so, what is UNCLOS? It's the United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Sea. It was adopted in 1982, and it basically lays down the law and order in relation to the oceans and seas of the world. How is this going to be monitored? What indicator have we here? So, for this, we have the number of countries making progress in ratifying, accepting, and implementing through legal policy and institutional frameworks ocean-related instruments that implement international laws. So we'll be basically looking at the number of countries making progress in ratifying and implementing those laws. So life below water, 10 targets, all very, very important and massive challenges there. I think the pollution, when you look at some of the material, the videos that you can see, the material is frightening, and I think it probably should make us all rethink, particularly in relation to the way that we use plastic. Plastic just doesn't degrade and certainly causes issue when it goes into the sea or other aquifers, rivers, lakes, any water source.